Boom. We are live. I appreciate it. So thank you, Zyori, for doing the podcast. Welcome to the Rare Network podcast. We're going to be interviewing exhibitors, sponsors from this year's Rare Evo, speakers, and episode number 1. We have Zyori from Crypto Unicorns with us, former head of Esports from Axie Infinity. Much appreciated to have you on today. If you'd like to give a little intro for those who have been under a rock for all of Web3 gaming the past 2 years, what would you give your intro?
Well, I joined Axie Infinity about 2 years ago. That was my first full-time foray into the Web3 blockchain space. Before that, I was working in esports, doing some talent work, doing some event organization, doing a little bit of project management. And before that, I was a university student about 10, 15 years ago. I'm that old. But I joined Crypto Unicorns or Laguna Games about a month ago. This is the beginning of my 3rd week. So still kind of dipping my toes in and trying to wrap my brain around everything. But I've made the jump from being an esports guy. Oh, that's my alarm to make sure I wake up for the show, Rand. As you can see,
we got to be in the meeting. Yeah,
I made it. So that's good. But now I'm working more on the product side with Crypto Unicorns. So it's a DAO over there with the Rainbow token. So I'm working on trying to build a process of connecting community feedback into actual game development, and then also trying to build out a plan for user experience and product flow, player flow, and get everything ready to kind of on ramp the next generation of Crypto Unicorns. We got the really hardcore, awesome gameplay set up with the land, but now we need to build some of the the loading screens and the lobbies to get you set up for why the land is so awesome. So it's kind of a cool spot to be in now. I'm excited to move out of just like esports guy and actually be a little closer to actual product development.
Yeah, going towards that esports thing in your history, like quick intro, Dota 2 experience, early gaming. Was gaming what led you into blockchain, or was it crypto and then you kind of fell into the gaming side because you were already there?
Kind of both. It's early on, I guess I was maybe one of those people that saw Ethereum in like 2018 and thought, wow, there's going to be games built on this. I mean, in 2018, I did try to make a game with a fellow Dota talent that graduated from Waterloo. He's still doing Dota talent work, so he's doing just fine for himself. But it was this little thing called crypto geodes. It was like a little deflationary game loop where you get these geodes and you put them in this miner and you decide if you want to keep them or mint them. And it had this little rock battle game. Basically, we spec'd out something kind of cool, didn't know how to make it. And didn't really know how ahead of the curve we were. Like, this was before people were calling it NFTs. They're just like little blockchain addresses that we were like, okay, so those are the rocks, and it didn't click. It just felt clunky. We had actually started with a prisoner's dilemma simulator. That was how I met Psych Out Alexander from Axie Infinity, or Sky Mavis, the co-founder that I first interviewed with and kind of connected about the job. So I had known about Bitcoin for a while before that, but I didn't really have any money and didn't know how to set up a wallet, and just kind of watched it from like, hey, this is kind of a cool technology. Hey, I'm in college. I don't got no money to spend anyway. But yeah, even after the game, even though I kind of believed in it, I still didn't really buy that much. I was a Litecoin guy at the beginning. I had an L3 miner. I bought a couple Litecoins. And I still got those Litecoins. We'll see what happens there.
I had an L3 miner as well. That's hilarious. And man, we've been talking for 2 years. I never knew that story of you trying to create your own game and stuff. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. Well, when we found Axie Infinity, we felt like shit. We got beat to the punch. Like, somebody already got there, and this is a real IP. We were just like the pet rock on the blockchain, which is funny to think about. Ether rocks, which were worth quite a bit at one point. We never minted anything on mainnet. It was all testnet stuff. So again, like, so early that we had no idea what we were doing, didn't even see the value in what we were doing, and just went, making YouTube videos is a lot easier than writing code for this shit. We were also trying to do stuff all on chain, which we didn't understand how complicated that was, and that it was going to be okay to compromise. At that point, we didn't see the future of, it's going to be a combo of centralized and decentralized. At that point, our mentality was, it has to all be decentralized or this shit is pointless, which is a very hardcore game development philosophy. But, a bunch of kids in 2018 that didn't know anything about making games. So I'm not surprised we got some things wrong. However, I still have the business plan, a little white paper, and And who knows? I mean, it's certainly better than some of the garbage that we've seen cycle through the industry in the last 2 years. There's been so many not games that have some kind of gamification layer, you know, kind of masquerading as a game. There's a lot of good stuff out there too, but you know what I'm talking about, man. That's the downside of the freedom, is that there's just a lot of volume. You see it on Amazon KDP too. Anybody can publish a book. That means there's a lot of books out there with a lot of typos because you don't have to get an editor. There's also some great shit on Amazon KDP, and it's opened up a channel for people to have a voice and spread the word if they really have awesome viral content. But you can't have one without the other. Just
you get the whole mix.
How she goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess looking back over the past, I don't know, 6 months or so, what made the change happen to crypto unicorns? You know, what can you give us a little history on all that?
Yeah, well, I left Axie. I wanted to leave Axie, but it was at a time where it's just I'm like an adult now, Rand. You know, I used to be a contractor. I used to just take gigs when I got them and have all the freedom. And then somewhere along the line, I got a job. And Sky Mavis got me used to this whole salary thing. And once you get used to that, it gets a little harder to be like, I'll just not do that for a while and find a job. You kind of want to make a jump, right? And be able to just keep life going the way it's supposed to be going. So it took me a little while, you know, like after AxieCon, I felt pretty confident that Axie was not going to be for me long term, which is hard being in a forward facing role where my job is kind of to evangelize the game and the concept, and knowing that you want to kind of move away from that. It's just it's draining. And I think Q4 last year, esports had layoffs, tech had layoffs, and Web3 had massive layoffs. So that's like the intersection of my entire life. That's everything I know how to do right there. So really hard time to find a jump. And part of the reason Crypto Unicorns came about is that I have a long-term friend that works at the company that I've known for a while, and he's worked there for a pretty long time now. So that gave me some confidence. Like, okay, I can see under the hood a little bit. He's at least assured me that it's a real company. You know, things are going out on time, things are evolving. And it kind of opened my eyes to realize, like, blockchain gaming is at an interesting nexus point right now where what you see in the market is really not emblematic of what's happening in the industry, because so many people are building in secrecy. And even the ones that are kind of building in public with the community right there still have a lot of things in the pipeline that they haven't revealed to their community yet. So there's a lot of understandable secrecy, and I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you just look at what you can see on Twitter and take a snapshot as if that really is what's happening. So the more crypto unicorns people I met, I did a lot of interviews. It was I think I did 7 different interviews before they ended up offering me a position. So I really got to know them pretty well. 2-way interviews, I like to call it. You know, am I a good fit for you? Are you a good fit for me? And I like their energy. I like their vibe. I like their vision. And I think if we remember that Crypto Unicorns has only been around for about a year, I'm fairly impressed at what they've built. You know, it took Axie a really long time to build a good LAN game, and I think they've built a pretty good LAN game. And I think their vision for building out all of these additional unicorn experiences on top of that, it's not dissimilar from the Axie Builders program in terms of, we have these basic assets, we need to give them more utility. The difference is that they're in the Laguna Games wheelhouse instead of it being a sort of third party getting the community to create their own game studios. It's just a game studio making a bunch of games and partnering with outside developers and game studios to help us, but still a little more centralized than the Axie model. And I don't know, we'll see which one works out better. I don't know that one's better or worse than the other. It's just different trade-offs, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that's what excites me about Crypto Unicorns. It's similar enough to Axie that it feels very familiar to me in a good way. And I think some of the experience translates, where if I was working on like a first-person shooter on Solana, I think I'd feel a little more like a fish out of water, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, man. And there was some really good alpha you dropped in there about like the differentiator between like what's public for people that are on Twitter and can see versus a lot of the moves that are happening in the industry behind the scenes that people aren't really privy to yet, and a lot of the building that's going on. And I know the public is really frustrated with, like, you know, it's easy to throw a rug out there and so many rugs come through, and like builders like Crypto Unicorns and things take time to put it together and to come out. And like with that, I'd love do you have any comments on recent news, like some of the announcements that have been made in the past few days? The PlayStation 2, patent they just did on NFTs and being transferable between titles, as well as Avalanche and things at GDC seems to be making a splash, or the Dr. Disrespect game coming out. What are your thoughts on kind of recent
Oh, it's all really exciting. I think we've all known that AAA has been coming for a while, and dude, humans are so predictable. Once you get like into your 30s, you're old enough to start seeing like patterns in decades, which is such a fucking old dude thing to say.
Damn it.
I saw this so hard when Dota 2 was coming out, and like Heroes of New Earth was the hot MOBA game, and like League hadn't quite taken off yet, and Dota was this rumored like, dude, it's gonna be the shit. Everyone's gonna leave this crappy game for this new one. Just you wait. And it was like this thing that obnoxious people threaten the community with all the time. It's like, this game sucks. That's why we're all leaving for Dota. Like, in a couple months, when it's out, whenever it's out, we're all leaving. And then, people, and it's just this like, but at the same time, that they're right. Everybody knew that Dota 2 was going to be better than Heroes of New Earth. It was just a better game studio. There was more time being put into it. And it's like we're all waiting to get into like the alpha. We all knew that there was this kind of secret alpha that the pros had been playing and kind of pre-testing and all this kind of stuff. So it's just you're seeing humans do the same thing where there's some that get it, and then there's some that are obnoxious with it, and then there's some that just put their head in the sand and go, "Nuh-uh, everything's fine. That's just what ifs. Yeah, sure. The future game's gonna be great." Like sometimes it is. And I think the same thing has kind of happened here for that spectrum in terms of the future of AAA is coming, and you have some folks that refuse to acknowledge it. I think some that acknowledge it and kind of get a sense of, oh yeah, there's some badass games being made in Korea right now, and they're going to be plugged into the network of Korean commerce, and it's going to have some tokenomics, and the projections look good. Let's put it that way, And then there's people in the middle that are kind of don't get it, but that are kind of threatening, like everything's shit, just and it's like you're a wide spectrum of humanity. But it's so funny because it's that same kind of pattern, and I think you're like laughing because it's true. Like these good games are coming, and now we've seen it confirmed. Like the EVE Online people, right? They're doing something with blockchain. That's huge. That's a big move. We got the Maple Story IP. That's now going to be doing something with blockchain. Like you said, PlayStation, they ain't filing patents for no reason, dude. They're doing something with NFTs, which means they're doing something with blockchain. So if the writing is not on the wall for you at this point, man, you can say that there's a lot of problems and that we haven't figured it all out, and that, hey, what about this big issue? Like, I'm with you, man. This train's moving a mile a minute, and we're really patching up holes in real time. But
yeah,
like if you follow Fwiz on Twitter, I think he is doing a really good job of capturing like the difficulty and beauty of Web3. Like he has so much social media maturity to talk about like, wow, this thing was really hard. This thing got messed up, but I feel really good. I feel really strong. We learned a lot from this experience. Like he's a great leader, a kind of thought leader in that regard without being over the top. And I appreciate that so much. That very kind of realistic, like, hey guys, this is hard. It's not that polished. We got to do a lot of really dirty work. Dirty work's maybe not the right term. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like gritty work, like unknown work, like shit that's going to fail and it's kind of going to suck while we figure out how to make it not fail. This is like sort of pioneer stuff. We're going to slip off the cliff a couple times until we make it to the top kind of vibe. And I appreciate that. I think we need that dose of realism. And part of why people get so salty these days is because we dialed the expectations up to like 11, and then even if you dial at 10, deliver at 10 out of 10, people are like, yeah, but you didn't go above and beyond like you said you would.
yeah.
Why did we do this to ourselves? So yeah, I think this news is great though. It reaffirms the thesis, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, we're all here to game, and we're on the right path, that's for sure. How's like the onboarding process been with crypto unicorns, initial initiatives in your new role? How's all that been?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to compare it to because I worked in the startup world a lot. And then when I started at Axie, there were only like 30 people there. And so there wasn't a lot of onboarding infrastructure. There's been more Rails than that, though. I at least got like a nice organized document of some key beats, things coming up, some key people to talk to about, initiatives. And I joined at just the perfect time where there's a lot going on. You know, we just released Jousting, Team RPG has been like talked about, and it's in the canon. And then there's other stuff that I'm not sure how much of it's been talked about, but the canon's got some layers to it. So there's just there's plenty of shit. There's no shortage of stuff to do. And weird as this might sound to say, I've experienced situations in the past where I want to help and it feels like people are a little bit like, no, this is my thing. And I've become a little more sensitive to trying to make sure when I'm the new guy on the block and I want to help or take something off someone's plate, be really cautious about like, hey, just give me as much as you're comfortable giving me. I'm not trying, like, this isn't a pride, this isn't a territory thing. I'm just seeing gaps and I'm trying to help where I can. And so far people have been very much like, oh, you want to work on that? Oh, dude, please. Like, that's awesome. You know, it seems like there's a number of things where people recognize it's important, but it's not their responsibility to see it through. So it just kind of gets tossed around until it becomes a crisis. And then somebody finally kicks it over the finish line. So I'm excited to soak up a couple of those things. I think lore is one example of something I feel comfortable talking about a little more publicly, is like the unicorn lore is really deep with Shadowcorns. I think I asked a couple basic questions that we don't have answers to, which is good. You know, there's kind of a blank canvas there, but now that we're deploying more stuff in the universe, I think it's time to start like, let's organize the story a little bit. Let's figure out, you know, set the stage. What's the name of the place that we're in? You know, Axie is called Lunasia. Where are we? You know, we've got the Dark Forest. I asked somebody the other day, like, all right, so we got the Dark Forest. Where do the unicorns leave from to enter the Dark Forest? And whoever was on camera made that face like,
we haven't thought about that one yet.
It's a good question. I don't think we've got a name for it. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Honestly, I'd rather you say that than you told me like we called it Dorfletown. Like, oh Jesus Christ. Like, you know, at least now we can still workshop something cool instead of being committed to like what I would call lore debt. You know, so
yes.
Some stuff like that where, you know, it might not feel mission critical, but if part of the stated goal in the white paper is to turn this into a generational IP, getting the lore into a digestible, you know, what's the high level? What are we doing here? What are we farming for? What's the expanded level synopsis? And what's that kind of deeper, okay, who are the unicorns? What's their purpose, man? You know?
I love it. I love it. You're hitting on what was going to be my question, was just like, what is the lore of crypto unicorns for those that don't know? What is crypto unicorns about? And what the heck? What is jousting? What are we jousting?
Yeah. So the high level though, you got these unicorns, you got these shadowcorns. They all came from eggs. They're the 10K shadowcorn eggs, and there's now 3,000 shadowcorn eggs. As I say, shadowcorn, 10,000 unicorns, 3,000 shadowcorns. The shadowcorns are still a little bit mysterious, but they're sort of the evil counterparts to the unicorns. I'm working on right now assembling the full backstory and trying to make it as accurate to what's happened on the blockchain as possible. I think that's one of the cool things about lore with these IPs, where you can play with that god figure a little bit, where, okay, so you have these unicorn shadowcorns, maybe there's some peace times, some war times, whatever, you know, historical stuff, the wars of the ages, whatever, and there's a long peace time, then all of a sudden the shadowcorns start fucking around and they invent something that is mutually destructive, and unicorns kind of get wiped out. But they save some eggs. They're like, oh no, we see the countdown on the bomb, so let's like bury these eggs or something, hope they survive. And then however much time later, these gods, the users, I think they dubbed them the metaverse pioneers, show up and they hatch the eggs. And luckily these unicorns pop out. Yeah, I was one of these guys. These guys show up with this money, throw a little money at the problem, put a little milk in there, and these fucking unicorns come out. It's awesome. So that's the general basis, I think. And now we're starting to fill in. It's like, I think that's part of the lore of like, hey, why are the unicorns just farming kind of aimlessly? It's like, well, because they just kind of hatched and don't really know. They're just surviving, dude. They're just making food. They're just eating. They're just replenishing the population is good enough for them for now. And then figuring out how the shadowcorns fit into that. You know, what are the shadowcorns mad about? Why are they evil? That kind of thing. I think one one cool arc that we're going to get to play with. And I'm excited to tease this stuff a little bit because the goal is to make this collaborative with the community. So I think this is stuff people can start to think about. To me, the first step is organizing the historical stuff that's like sort of already happened. Y'all have already collaborated on it one way or another. I want to capture that, put it somewhere, and then we'll work on telling the future story together, right? I feel like we have to do a little catch up, and then we can really get excited about frameworks of the future.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense.
But, Shadowcorns have a fixed supply. They don't breed. And unicorns obviously don't have a fixed supply because they can breed. So that's going to be kind of an interesting thing to play around with a little bit, and find ways to, okay, that's a fact of the blockchain. Now, how do we tell that, weave that into the story in a way that isn't just like the blockchain says, but hey, there's some fantastical explanation for why the supply, why there's only so many Shadowcorns and that kind of stuff. So pretty cool. I think that's the fun part of my job.
Yeah.
The other side is really trying to connect the dots and the pieces of, all the user feedback and trying to prioritize. All right, we've got limited resources. We've got a lot of really cool ideas, and we've got a bunch of user pain points. How do we reconcile all of this and start to converge the qualitative and the quantitative? You got some data that says one thing. You've got some feelings that say another thing. That's the magic, baby. When are your feelings right and when are the numbers right? Because data doesn't lie, but data also doesn't always understand the full context. So, it's tricky.
That makes sense. And for like the viewers and users, what is currently usable in the game with land play, and then what is jousting?
Yeah, so jousting is cool because it's the first major update to the gameplay that they've shipped since land was actually dropped. After land came out, I guess 10 months ago, a year ago, something like that, maybe a little bit less. That's the farming simulator. The Shadowcorns gameplay was like a Web3 kind of browser staking. You stake your unicorn, goes to the dark forest, you get some unicorn milk. So more like almost like a wolf game style kind of. It's a game, but it's not like OpenGL built in Unity kind of game like the land gameplay is. Jousting is an extension of land gameplay now, where you don't have to have land, but when you click play game, it says, do you want to go into jousting or do you want to go into land? And you can do jousting with just one unicorn. That's it. And jousting is this, kind of tournament based. It's 1 versus 1. It's automated battles, but the stats of the unicorn do matter than with a bunch of RNG stuff. So it's not exactly like Zed Run Racing where it's, just sort of totally random type stuff. I guess stats maybe matter a little bit. There's potions and stances, so you can kind of strategize a little bit based on your unicorn's deficits. And the unicorn stats do come into play. And the way the unicorn stats are rolled, like some can be bred to just be objectively higher stat, where some are objectively lower stat. So there's sort of a meta around breeding, and there's different cups that say, hey, you have to have this stat requirement. So this is the preseason, but this represents the first like real gameplay that you can do with the unicorns that isn't just in the farming simulator and sending them on adventures to just collect resources, but there's a visual component, so you can see your unicorn line up and they smash into each other, and you can see the numbers and stuff. So there's plans to expand it. This is the preseason, so we had to get the kind of prototype out there. But the initial feedback is very strongly like there's got to be some brackets. There's got to be some breakpoints. There's got to be more reasons to breed strategic unicorns for jousting that aren't just, hey, we're the best ones. That's cool that the highest stat ones win, and that can be a thing. But there need to be some tiers or some ELO or some kind of like handicaps of like, hey, max stats in these categories or something, so that you can breed for right at that maximum threshold, but
Yeah.
it's sort of like having a level 39 twink in World of Warcraft almost,
Yeah. Or if like, your unicorn's extremely fast, maybe that's like slippery on a wet course.
Exactly. So,
and you want a slower unicorn,
Exactly. So there's absolutely layers that can be added onto it. So I highlight that just to kind of point out this is not the finished product. That's why it's called the preseason, to try to highlight it's alpha and beta are like meaningless words now. So it's kind of whatever, man. It's not totally finished and polished yet. We put it out there so people can test it and give us feedback and get some proof of concept. So It is really cool though, because now you can play unicorns by having a unicorn without having land, like I said before. And it is now something else that you can do. And the pricing structure is a bit more sustainable, where you pay an entry ticket and a little RBW and sometimes some other stuff to enter. Then the prize, well, it's kind of like poker. Then the prize pool is made up of what goes into the pool, and I think a little rake goes into the treasury or whatever. So it is a way that you can win money. It is a quote play to earn mechanic, where if you're strategic and stuff, and then also there's potions that you can put on to give your unicorn buffs for different stats, and those get consumed. So if you're playing land, now there's a new thing that you can work towards to craft and make, and now there's a market for it, because there's people that have good unicorns, they just want to joust all day, they need to consume potions to joust at optimum level. Well, who's making the potions? People like you that are playing land all day and hogging up the resources. So it's a really nice expansion and framework, I think, to the unicorn universe, and definitely brings them to life a little bit. Seeing your unicorn in like higher res and 3D is kind of cool. I have that triple mythic rainbow, so seeing him in the arena is kind of cool. It's
the first time I logged into land play and saw the land and the like attention to detail and quality of the artwork, I was just like, okay, this is something I can relax and play and entertainment, and like I really enjoyed clicking through and collecting unicorn poop for some weird reason.
Yeah, they're getting better with it. And one thing that so I have office hours now. Like I just have a public Calendly so that community members can just hop on it and chat with me. So I can stay on the pulse and also get caught up, since I just started. And I hopped on with one of them that really highlighted, like, dude, I just want more ways to show off. Like we simulate that in our Discord, but I want to make my profile. I want to have my stats so that I can screenshot it and show it to people. Like that is such good feedback. And someone else told me sort of similar. I really love the UX updates to land, and that's awesome to see that you've had an impact. And I was like, buddy, I didn't do anything. Like that was done before I started. So like you should be excited about that though, because it's emblematic of how they've heard a lot of your feedback. And the reason it's felt so silent is because they spent all that time heads down building a tutorial and like making the user experience at least one step better. It's still not perfect, but now there's a better flow, and it looks a little better, and they're continuing to adjust it. Like they're clearly prioritizing that stuff. Now that they've hired people like me, we just hired another senior UX guy. We just hired another senior game producer. These are folks that are really going to be able to add that layer of polish. Like, this guy Franklin that they just hired on the UX side, he's worked for the last 10 years making dashboards for like major businesses like pharma and energy and like healthcare and stuff, where, all right, we got a dashboard with 1,000 data points that we need to monitor in real time. Put that in a user experience that doesn't suck. Like, wow, what a challenge that is. So having somebody like that really understands UX in a way that, I'm way beyond my experience, and also plays crypto unicorns and understands the pain points really well. Some good choices, some really good hires that I'm really enthusiastic about. So like usual, onboarding sucks and it's a little bit slow, but they've got some good people in the pipeline. And I think a lot of the stuff that I suggest, I brace for pushback, and they're like already thinking about that. That's a really great angle, and very seldom have I suggested something and gotten that response like, whoa, no one's ever suggested that before. We've never thought about it. Like they hear the feedback, they read it. It's just an overwhelming amount of feedback. And now I'm here to help,
organize.
Organize, communicate, prioritize, just like have bandwidth to help keep that moving target in focus. We're still gonna miss every so often, and it's an art form, but at least having the sense to know that needs to be prioritized, I think, is half the battle.
Yeah, and shout out to like Aaron and the OG founders of Crypto Unicorns. Like that's one of the things that brought me to Crypto Unicorns was, the history there and the resume of those founders kind of building the game. So that was one thing. Like I know it's definitely a solid team, and adding yourself to it just definitely makes it that much better. What's the future of Crypto Unicorns we don't know about? What are some little alphas? Maybe some people know, some people don't know yet.
Man, the alphas. Well, one thing that I guess I've heard people say a lot that I feel like I kind of agree with, is trying to figure out what is the right amount of mythic unicorn utility. I'm really fascinated by the mechanism that is mythic unicorn parts in this universe, because so I've heard a lot of people criticize it under the same, it's sort of like the Bitcoiners criticizing Ethereum. It's technically infinite, bro. Like, yeah, if it's fixed, then what's the supply? Give me the number. You can't, boom, it's theoretically infinite. And they say the same thing about, I've heard people say kind of the same thing about mythics. And yes, the Axie supply is capped, so that gives them a cool scarcity for the Axie mystics, if that's what we're comparing them to. But at the same time, doesn't it feel like a little bit of a shame that there's never going to be a 5-part or a 6-part mystic Axie? Like, it's cool that it was theoretically possible with the dice roll. And I guess, okay, technically there's still some AOC to be rolled, so maybe, but the numbers are so low that we'll be lucky to hit a 5, and it would be the lottery to hit a 6. With unicorns, there you can strategically use items to pass on the genes, and it's like it's going to take a while, and somebody might get lucky. But there's like 6 4-part mythics, no 5 parts, no 6 parts. So right now there's a bounty. I mean, if you breed the first 5-part, it's like, you know, tens of thousands of RBW. I think if you breed the first 6-part, it's 100,000 RBW or something. There's like a prize out there. So we have this going bounty for breeders that's like, yo, this is kind of a play to earn mechanic. Like, it's a one-time, like, world first kind of prize, but it's sick that we can over time create these like grail unicorns. Yes, that means there's going to be some inflation in the single part mythics and the 2-part mythics, but also it's kind of neat that there's maybe some inflation to that club. Like, you can buy a single part mythic for like 0.05, 0.1 ETH, something like that. So I'm actually a little bit bullish on entry points and it like not being this super, super expensive, you know, closed club. And you can save that for the like, okay, yeah, the 5-part mythic's going to be pretty expensive. And the guy who buys that is going to be really excited to spend some money on it. That spectrum is
grows
really
with the community as the game grows and the community around it grows.
So I think that's a cool mechanism that is a little bit underappreciated, that maybe some people don't even realize how potentially cool that is. Maybe they'll see it when we hit the first 5-part or when we hit the next 4-part. But I also have been toying around with what's the right amount of mythic utility. You don't want it to be super pay to win, where mythic unicorns are just better at everything, and if you don't have one, you're priced out. But I also think it's cool, like, it's very within the ethos of Web3 for your assets to have some kind of one-to-one matching of their tier and their rarity. Like, it kind of feels appropriate that each mythic part should give you some kind of a buff somewhere, either in staking your RBW or like in the gameplay itself. You know, maybe they give you an extra 2% per mythic part or something. I'm making up numbers. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I think there's merit to trying to just highlight mythics as, hey, these are a special thing in the community. They look special, but they're going to have little Easter egg ways to give you that extra little bump for the people that like want to be part of the club. It's not exactly a 10K, but it's sort of like in the spirit of a little bit, but we're in a position to actually give them just a little bit of utility. And I love the idea of old school, like vanilla World of Warcraft. Blackwing Lair comes out, you see people raiding the dungeon, and you're like, oh shit, there's that guy, and he's got the shoulders. They killed that boss. You're like, you see it, and you associate the item with like, oh wow, there's a status there because I've died to that boss before, and I know how hard it is. And there's something that translates there, I think, with mythic parts where I want you to be in a game, like in the battle, and when you see my triple mythic, be like, oh shit, that's a triple mythic. Damn, dude, yo, you know, like you pull your friend over, be like, yo, check this thing out. You know, you want to screenshot that shit. I like that. I think there's something cool to that prestige. You don't want that to be what the game is all about, but I think a little bit of speculation on that kind of stuff can be really healthy and really.
And to bring it back to like, you know, the speed of a unicorn on a wet track, or like, you know, sometimes you don't always want a drag car on a wet track, you know, that's got some curves to it. So a mythic unicorn might have a little bit of a boost to speed or whatever the stat may be, but that might be a hindrance on whatever course or weather it is at the time as well, you know. So it could go either way at that point.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good point where you can sometimes, that's good game design principle. Like, just make it about options. Mythics have slightly more options, but they're not inherently more powerful.
Exactly.
You know, they're not just numbers powerful, or if they are, it's a small amount. So anyway, that's something that like maybe that's lame alpha, but I guess just something to throw out there that I've seen that feedback, I've heard it, I've felt it. I mean, some people might have seen my tweet the other day. I wish my Axie Mystic had more utility. You know, like I think just in the space in general, we idolize these assets and build ecosystems around them. So I'm really excited to explore how we can strategically layer them into the ecosystem where they feel appropriately valued. You know, is that fair? You know, there's no promises there, of course, but I think it's pretty cool, and I'm really excited to see. You know, the race is on. I know people are breeding for those mythics, and it's like, dude, an 8 available breed 4-part mythic unicorn is probably worth a pretty penny right now. There's not many of those, you know.
Yeah.
And so there is an economy around it, dude. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Kind of kick it towards like live events and things like that. You know, what are your thoughts on the importance of networking events and live events? You've definitely done a lot of esports events, you know, AxieCon and with Dota and everything like that. What gets you excited about live events?
Yeah, I mean, as someone that works remotely, obviously it's refreshing just to go talk to humans instead of talking to a microphone and webcams. But there is something, I don't know how to say it exactly, but in person, people are just a little bit more open, and this is irrational because you could have, you know, a recording device in your pocket. Anybody's phone can be a recording device at any moment, but people speak more candidly in person and will kind of be like, bro, you want to see the real shit, and they'll show you like on their phone in person, you know, a little like thing that hasn't been launched yet. They would never send you a screenshot of it though, because it's too easy for you to just copy paste. Oops, that gets leaked. Oh, you got hacked. Somebody see, just whatever. You know, it feels like, whoa, that's crazy risky. I would never email you that because it's a violation of my NDA. But in person, people have a couple drinks and then they start talking. So like there is some magic that happens in person where it's not just sitting at a conference and getting lectured to, but it's just about connecting with people and building trust and understanding that there's layers of alpha where some stuff is like under lock and key, but there's some stuff that's like, nah, dude, you know, it's like kind of out there. We're telling our partners know about it. You know, it's sort of out there in the universe, but there's still an embargo on, you know, don't tweet about it. That kind of exists in every industry. It existed in esports. It exists in gaming because people want to be strategic about launches. You know, in esports, it existed with this tournaments. You know, in Dota, there was this big global tournament schedule that had all of this crazy alpha on it, and there were like 50 people that had access to it. But there was this game theory of like, well, why would anybody want to dox this schedule? Because it just fucks it up for everyone else. But it needs to exist because I don't want to schedule my tournament and book a venue at the same weekend you are. Game theory wise, it's better if we can all just plan around each other for everyone, for us, for our sponsors, for the players, whatever. So every industry has that, you know, that exists. And the more you meet people in person, and I think in an industry where there's so much anonymity and so much fake bullshit and so much hatred on Twitter and social media, being able to go and, you know, if you're like us and you're like a doxed person for the most part and your face is out there, it just reinforces that you're like a real human. So I think when you make mistakes, people are more likely to cut you some slack because they're like, hey, I at least saw that he's a real guy. You know, he's not just like a Twitter shill. And it also gives you the opportunity to meet other people that like have, you know, really like there's a lot of interesting people in Web3 with really diverse skills. So sometimes you meet someone that can't help you now, but in 6 months, you're like, dude, I need this sound engineer. I never thought I'd need a sound engineer, but here we are. This guy got a job offer, and dude, I'm so glad we connected. And I know that you're a real person because I shook your hand and, you know, got to see your stuff in real life. It always hits different. So I'm blathering now, but it is really important.
There was some great alpha in there. You've dropped some great alpha throughout this entire podcast.
Yeah. Well, I studied business, and I used to think like networking was kind of stupid because all the old dudes were like, you have to go and network. And then I realized that like networking is basically just having drinks with cool people. Like it's actually really awesome. And it is super, super important. Over time, it just gets harder and harder to meet people as like an adult human in the digital world. So finding opportunities to actually connect with people outside of phones and screens, I think is just, it's becoming more and more important. And honestly, I meet more people that are tuning that shit out and relying more on in-person connections. Like Twitter now is at a point where I meet people that are like, yeah, I'm not really, I missed your content because I don't really look at Twitter anymore. Like I look at it once a week and go, and then I just do other stuff now. So that's probably anecdotal and not emblematic of everyone, but I think that might be an increasing trend where it's getting more trendy to get away from social media because people are admitting that it's not good for their mental health. So that makes me bullish on in-person stuff because we're still social beings, man. Still want to trade alpha. Still got to get out there, you know?
I'm looking forward to having a drink at Rare Evo. That's for sure, man. I can't wait to see you on the main stage as an attendee and guest watching from the outside and having a drink at the after parties when we're relaxed and having some fun. That's for sure.
Yeah. It'll be cool.
To wrap it up, I want to ask everybody this question in every podcast. What is your favorite form of entertainment right now? What excites you? You listening to any podcasts? Is it a movie? Is it a game you're playing? You hitting the beach often? What is your way to relax right now?
Dude, that's a really, really good question. So I've been trying to reset a little bit because AxieCon was too much. I'm really proud of how it turned out, and like I got to level up personally doing all that stage work and writing all that content, and just like that was amazing. But it took a part of my soul, man. I mean, that was another one. Like I made a pact with myself that I was never going to do that again after the last, like when I was the CEO of that broadcasting company, I did that for 6 years. And there were multiple times where we were like all in with leverage on like events. And it's just like, okay, we cannot fail. And there were moments where my business partners didn't always they always showed up, but sitting at your desk isn't the same as being like a good co-founder, right? So there were just some times where it was just an inhuman amount of stress and anxiety, and I was in denial about it for a lot of years. I was like, it fuels me, and it's like, yeah, sort of, but eventually you just hit this wall of like, it doesn't fuel me anymore. It takes something. So AxieCon just ended up somehow or another. You get to this point where you're like, well, there's a sunk cost, and I'm in so deep that I can't pull the plug now. I just got to see it through. And I'm glad that I did, but yeah, it's just not healthy. You got to reset. You got to unplug. You really can't. It's not good to work every day. And I'm embarrassed at how much I bragged about. I work every day. Like that means you got a problem, dude. Like 6 out of 7 is actually okay if you're really doing something fulfilling that you like. Like being able to write lore. It's like some days at the end, like it's 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, I'm tired, but I'm like, dude, that day was awesome. I wrote stories all day. This felt so good, So you could do 6 days. I'm trying to do like 5.5, where you do like, it's like a 50 to 60 hour work week where you do 5 pretty intense days. Saturday, if you have that, like, I just want to finish this thing up, you wrap it up, and you really try to keep Sundays for yourself. And like, you take Sundays, and
What's Zyori doing on a Sunday?
This is a little embarrassing, dude, but my new thing is that like I only have one responsibility on Sundays, and it's clean my shit up and make sure that like when Monday starts, it's like I want to wake up feeling like the janitor came and the office is ready to go. Like everything's tidied up, the notes are right there. I just got to plug in the laptop, I turn on the light, and it's like I make the coffee and boom, work starts. I know what I'm doing. My first task is open on the screen. And like hit the ground running first thing Monday morning. And so far, so good. It feels good. But yeah, it's so simple. It's so basic. I've also been watching a lot of hockey. I enjoy sports betting. So I've been watching hockey, and the end of the season's been pretty hype. I like the Flyers, like the Avalanche, I like the Canucks. So hockey's been cool.
You're gonna love our crew. Lots of Philly Flyer fans and family in the Rare Evo team, as well as love the Avalanche. Last time I was in Colorado, went to the Avalanche game. It was amazing. Except for they shut down the box office, and you have to use Ticketmaster and get the fees. There's no way to purchase a ticket in cash anymore. That hurt.
Yeah, but I'm just resetting, dude. I'm trying to keep it simple and like get back to the basics a little bit. I've been cooking more. I have been swimming more, but also just trying to like go outside literally every day. I live in Puerto Rico. I live in paradise. So at least go walk in the sun, go look at the ocean for 10 minutes and just reset the eyes. I have no excuse not to. It's this whole island is ocean. So like, just get outside, look at the sun. It's good for you. And yeah, building up from there, going back to the roots. So that's it. That's all I've got. I've also been reading this book, The Mastermind. That one, it came out in 2019, about that dude Paul LaRue, who some people think could be Satoshi. I've been telling people, even if he's not, the story is so fascinating that like I almost want him to be Satoshi. I mean, it's like some of the wildest shit: international drug cartel, arms dealing, all this stuff, and it's like, he's like this mastermind programmer. He started this crazy pharmacy scam. Like, remember all those crazy like RX pills ads we used to see on the internet like 10, 15 years ago that were just everywhere? Like, who's doing this? Who's paying for all these pharmacies? That was him. That was his online drug empire. And they were actually filling scripts. Yeah, it was crazy. It was bananas. So anyway, that's been my
I'm gonna have to check that
recently.
out.
It's called The Mastermind. Yeah.
The Mastermind.
Yeah, Paul LaRue is the guy. He's in jail right now. So that's the thing. Like, if he's Satoshi, he's probably gonna survive and get out of jail in our lifetime. So who the fuck knows? Dude, when they asked him like if he gets out on parole, what's he gonna do? He said he was gonna start a Bitcoin mining farm because he knows a lot about it. So maybe he's just talking shit, but that's a little. I'm like, that's something.
Wow,
that's something. At least.
Yeah. That is something. Man, even dropping some good ones when it comes to just personal entertainment. I'm definitely looking that up. I got production Evan in my ear over here saying we got to mention Rare Evo tickets at the end of this podcast.
Hell yeah, dude.
So for those that want to come see Zyori Jazz at Rare Evo in August 24th through 26th, tickets are online at rareevo.io. General admission tickets are $175 currently, and VIPs are $850. We hope to see you all there. I think we could wrap it up here, Zyori, for the stream. I appreciate you coming on for the first podcast ever for Rare Network, and definitely have to do this again. That's for sure.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's fun, and I think with Crypto Unicorns, I'll be able to go do more stuff at conferences and speak and evangelize. So it was nice that it lined up that we were talking. I think you were talking to them, and it was just this like, hey man, the stars are aligning. So I love it when that feeling clicks. So super excited to see everybody in Denver. I used to live out that way, so it's a great place. I'm sad that I missed the first one, but super stoked to be on board for this one, dude.
Dude, we appreciate it.